In my life I've been often very, very fond of movies. And I was very struck and enjoyed it, that film with Burns, wasn't it? Oh God, where he ends up he plays God. And he's God. And he got this chap working in the supermarket who gets chosen by him to send the message of God. And it ends up in the court case where an evangelical preacher takes him to court. And then our hero calls upon as his witness God, you see. And then you get these steps appearing and a little door opening, and then a seat being sat upon, and God does appear as a witness. And I thought, when I saw that, this is fun, but that's for me, you see. I can't, God's got to be a chap who can sit on a bench or somewhere and come round and be here concretely. There's that song by that woman singer Morrissey, and so God is good, God is great. But what if God was one of us, riding on a bus with us? And as it has to be that, this terrible tendency in people to, in me, to high things are big and distant. The more they are like that, increasingly vague they become. And when we know in our lives, there's this sense of reality which is almost like a nervous system, like little flashes of light. And the rest is a kind of afterthought which comes from it. I was very much enamored with a person, enjoyed very much, who assumed the name Charlotte Bach, and he was actually a man who played the part of a woman just completely, so he fooled people. But he had to get back to basic imagination and say, what is a human being? And he said, how things coming from these electrical discharges in the nerve cells and so on. He said, we start from these scintillating points of light. He said, it isn't like here is the body and the flesh and the bones and the blood and so on, and you've got a nervous system built in it. He said, the reality is created from the points of light, sparkling off, and you invert the whole thing. And what are these points of light? And they're just all these moments in human life. You imagine that there's a street out there, and the people walking down the street, and they got jobs and families and all the rest of it, and that's the reality. And then they have experiences, and they get high thoughts, and they start dreaming about God. But that's completely the wrong way around, as far as I'm concerned. You know? And I had an impression of this once in St. Peter's in Rome. I always tell everybody, I go to see the wonderful works of art in the cathedral at St. Peter's. And I got disinterested in the great art, religious art. I was looking at the tourists. And the tourists had their cell phones flashing pictures around, and these flashes of light going off, because you really was the revelation. And I say, imagine the world going on now and say, it's not run by committees, you see. It's like somebody walking down the street has a moment, and the person on a bus has a moment, the person flying a plane has a moment. And it's just like our own nervous system, these flashes going on. And that's where God is, you see. It's always in the concrete particular. But because we have the assumption that the basic sure reality is that there is a wall and there is a floor, and this is the sound and all the rest. And then there's this evolution trick, and then we have these organisms, and these organisms generate weird stuff, like dreams and images, and then we start giving them labels, and it's all a kind of accidental spin-off. We can disappear, and there'll still be all these rocks and planets, and all the rest of it is questionable. Because in a way, then God can't fit into the universe, can't come to us individually. It's impossible. Earth has to be something weird, unknown, separate. There's a lovely story of Goethe says about his father and his first teacher, the Father Borscht, this game they had. They would meet up and they would ask these crazy questions, and they had to answer it immediately. And then one of the questions was, where is God right now? And he says, he's in Bukhara, immediately. But that instantaneousness is part of this, because if you delay for a time, you construct this shadow world. You've got time for the shadow world to come in which it's no matter what you believe in, what's the evidence and all that. But everything immediate, for me, is of God, because it's direct. It is itself. It's absolute kind of thing. And I just think of another image of this is him in a conversation I had with a German student years and years ago. She was very much into Salvador Dali and the film The Chien de Loup, the surrealist film, the scene between the man and the woman. And she came up with this phrase that happened to be put in that says, he said, when a man and woman look in each other's eyes, time is created. I thought, yes, that's the difference for me. If you're in a world where what is there definitely are the things which don't move, and then you believe in the things which don't move as the solid reality, you see. And so all the things that do move are a bit weird, because they're like, that's life, you see. And the elements which experience are even further away and unlikely. Well, let's invert that. You see, this room here is a residue of experience. It's a fossil. It's a dreg. So actually, people are addicted to living in a world of dregs. Coagulations, residues, this kind of thing. Why not just entertain it as a piece of entertainment, of fun? Feel this tempo. I had another friend of mine, Matchett, he talked about making meaning in time delta t, who was obsessed with it. What is this time delta t? He got hooked onto the one theory of the universe in which at a rate of, which has a unit of 10 to the minus 40 seconds, that's the world dissolves and is recreated. And so this idea is, it's there solidly, it's not a good, this comes back again, comes back again, like that. And see, especially with oneself, I mean, there's awful clinging to one's existence. If you get the feeling of this model of attitude, just, of course I'm forgetting my existence, and actually my existence is forgetting me. It vanishes, and then it's reconstituted in various ways. And you might get the taste of this, and you don't have to rely on objects to define you. As long as you rely on objects to define you, God becomes an impossible object, which cannot exist. So I say, in this different tempo, you can pick it up. Getting to imagine my friend used to like certain kinds of rap and modern music because they said it had a kind of beat in it, which is like this, evoked this sense of it. Now, coming now, coming now, coming now. There's not the be here now thing at all. It's just like, this is the reality, this is the reality. And you feel it so you can turn yourself upside down and inside out, and with calmness, with a sense of fun. So ultimately I would say, God is the best fun there is. This is the source of all fun. Almost to, slightly, it's not quite the right thing, almost to echo with T.S. Eliot, quick now, here now, always, ridiculous, the way sad time stretching before and after.